Hello and welcome to today's episode of Dream Business, Dream Life. Today I'm joined by Bryony Jackson. Bryony is a visibility and growth strategist with a career of over 25 years under her belt in sales and marketing. She's extremely passionate about making marketing jargon-free, stress-free and easy. She loves to show her clients how to achieve this via her business, Bryony Makes Marketing Easy. Hello, Bryony. Great to have you here with us.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Okie dokie. Right. I like to get stuck straight in. So take us back a little bit. Take us back to life pre-business owner. Tell us what life looked like for you back then.
So, life pre-business owner is actually not that far away. So, I'm probably at the stage of many of your clients are. I started my business in May of this year. So, previous to that, I had a 25-year career in sales and marketing in the pharmaceutical industry. So, as a child, I worked on a farm, and all I wanted to do was marry a farmer so I could look after the orphan lambs. So, somewhere along the way, farmer turned into farmer, as in pharmaceuticals. Don't ask me how I got into that industry, but I started right at the bottom, working in telesales, selling to retail pharmacists. And I worked my way up through going out on the road as a medical rep, going into the training department to train our new reps that were coming in, and then going into brand management. And I worked my way right up to senior brand management. So I was looking, working for multi-million pound pharma companies, looking after multi-million pound brands. And then I did what I always said I would never do, and I went agency side onto the dark side. So I started working for digital marketing agencies who all did projects on behalf of the pharmaceutical industry. I started freelancing part time, and then again worked myself my way right up to the top. So I was actually second in command in the company. And part of my role as that senior person was to create digital marketing strategies for our clients that would get their products seen by the right people and understood by the right people so that we could get our products to the right patients at the right time. A massive sort of part of our work was email marketing. And another big part of our work was digital advertising, but we also did things like interactive web pages, interactive sales aids, presentations, and things like that. But all obviously, because it's the pharmaceutical industry, very data heavy. So that was my life prior to this business. Within that time, I suffered from workplace stress because the workloads were so high. I suffered from workplace bullying at the hands of senior management. And then I was made redundant. So in January of this year, which actually seems like about 10 years ago now, I was made redundant. Whilst I was on my deathbed with COVID, I was made redundant. And I wasn't so worried at first. I just thought, oh, I'll go find another job. But it turned out that our industry, so the actual digital agency industry, was really dying at the time. And there just were no jobs to be had. And I've often toyed with the idea of getting out of the pharmaceutical industry. And I knew that I wanted to start my own business. I knew that I wanted to help small business owners be successful. And I knew that my skill was marketing and visibility. So that's how I kind of came to this idea of Bryony Makes Marketing Easy.
Lovely. So you have a lot of experience under your belt. And I
I
think we had
do.
a little conversation, didn't we, before we started recording that we
Mm.
we are our own worst enemy and not always talking about what we've done before our businesses. Because for a lot
That's
of
right.
people, it is not necessarily the experience you've had since you've been in your own business, especially at the beginning of your journey. It's about all of the stuff that you've done before that makes you the right person to be able to help and support your clients moving forward. So definitely a
That's
lesson
right.
in there for all of us, isn't there, about
Yeah.
making sure we're talking about what we've done pre-business too.
Yeah, and I think some of the reasons that we shy away from talking about that because it's in a different industry. So I've been thinking, well, it's the pharmaceutical industry, so you guys aren't going to be interested in that. And I've had other people say the same thing, but actually, it's what we did in that industry. And what I did in that industry was I got eyes on people's products, and that's what I do now. So I got eyes on people's products and services. I also built up um, brands. I developed brands. I also developed the kind of public persona for these companies. I developed how they wanted to be viewed by their customers. It wasn't just all about the products. And that's all the stuff that I do now. So I don't know why I don't talk about it. So thank you for eking that out of me.
Yeah, and you're not alone in that. I think we all do that, and I know
Mm.
I certainly did exactly the same. For me, it was slightly different because I came from one business to another business, but completely different businesses. And I
Yeah.
was the same. It's like, oh, I'm not going to talk about my other business because I didn't like that business. But actually,
Mm.
it's that business that has given me the skills and expertise, apart from the corporate stuff prior to that, but and the passion to do business how I do it now. So
Yeah.
super important that we talk about it. It's super
Yeah.
important.
That's actually just reminded me of something else because I have actually had my own business before. Last time I was trying to make a break from the pharmaceutical industry, and I retrained and became a holistic therapist. And I had a holistic therapy business, but I did it alongside my pharmaceutical work. And my plan was I was going to give it a year and then ditch the pharmaceutical work, go full time. Something happened at the end of that, which meant I didn't do that. But that's a whole other story, which we probably will get into. But I've just realized that I never talk about that. And the important reason why I should talk about that is because I built up a business from not being a holistic therapist to being a newly qualified holistic therapist. I built up a really viable business in a really short space of time. And the reason I managed to do that was because I have the visibility and growth skills to be able to do it.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
100% you should be talking about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when you came into this business world, I'm not going to say for the first time, because obviously we've just discovered it wasn't the first time, but when you
Yeah.
came out into this business world, how did it feel for you?
I think it felt quite daunting because this business is quite, I feel, is quite different to anything I've ever done before because it's very much an online business. I'm working with online service providers, which I haven't really done before. Um, but I think the important thing to remember is, although I've had to tweak certain things to fit that industry, the principles that I use remain the same that I've used throughout my whole 25 years.
Yeah, and I think we forget that sometimes, don't we? We
Yeah.
think that, people talk about corporate being totally different to, small business, and it isn't.
Mm,
Strategy is the same. It'll be at different levels and there'll be different things that you've got to take into consideration, but it's
mm,
actually all the same stuff, isn't it? And I think sometimes we try and not do some of the stuff we do in corporate, in our small businesses,
yeah.
too hard. I think we try too hard to be different. And I think, we need to be a little bit similar, don't we? We need to
Yeah.
bring some of that stuff across.
And another great example of how these skills transfer from industry to industry is my ex-partner was an electrician working for a big company, but he decided to set himself up as self-employed. I set up his business, I did all his digital marketing, and in his first year, he had a 50K a year. Now, I know nothing about electricity, but what I do know about is how to promote a business. And that's again those transferable skills that work from industry to industry, from person to person. And I think it's really important that we remember that those skills fit all industries.
Yeah, completely. So obviously visibility is one of your things. It's what you do, it's what you've always done. So when it
Mm,
came to putting yourself out there in terms of your own visibility, did that come naturally? Because it's different sometimes, isn't it? Being able to tell
it
people what
is.
they need to do and actually doing it yourselves it can quite
Yeah.
often be two completely different things. How did you find that piece?
Well, I have a bit of a visibility story. And this ties into why I never left the pharmaceutical industry to follow my holistic therapy business. So I had a massive problem with visibility because when I started this business, the whole year before, I had been completely invisible. I was on no social media at all. And the reason for this was I had stalker. So my ex-partner had been a psychologically abusive relationship. And when I left him, it turned really, really bad and turned into stalking and harassment. I had to have him arrested, have him charged, etc. But because I was being stalked and harassed, I moved house overnight, which is why I had to close down my holistic therapy business. I was actually really lucky that I have a camper van because I lived in my camper van. And then I just surfed Airbnbs because I needed good internet for the job that I was doing. And then I got lucky with a rental property. But So I was on no social media whatsoever. Nobody knew where I lived, not even my family. They knew what town I was in. They didn't know where I lived. And I was completely invisible. So when I came to start doing this business, I thought I do not want to be visible online, because I do not want him to see me. I was worried that he would say bad things about me online. I was worried that he would try and sabotage my business. So I set up a business called Smasheroo. Don't ask, there was a reason for it, but and I only ever used a logo. I never used my face, and there was no person behind this business. And it took me probably less than a month to realize this just wasn't going to work. Right from the beginning, I knew that something wasn't talking to me. I knew that something wasn't right in my branding, in my business, and in my messaging. And then I got to realize that because I had to be the brand of this business, because I was the person helping the people, I knew this wasn't going to work. Luckily, I'm really determined. I've done 6 marathons and an Ironman, which shows that I will not be beaten.
Absolutely,
And I
goodness
just
gracious.
I just thought, I am not prepared to let somebody else define how I live my life and how I make my living. So I thought, I'm just going to have to be really, really brave. I'm going to have to put myself out there, and whatever happens will happen, and I will deal with it once it has. So in one day, I completely changed my branding, made a new logo, changed my business name, and got it out there. And that literally was the pivot point of my business journey. And that's when everything started happening for me.
What a journey. What a
Yeah,
journey. And I think, that must have been really, really difficult for you to,
it
to
was.
make
Yeah,
that step to, to become visible in
yeah.
such circumstances. But you did it. And I think, I think
Mm,
that's the key thing, isn't it? It's everybody can be visible. It's finding a way that sits comfortably with you, isn't it, I suppose?
that's right. Yeah. And um, I've almost probably gone the other way in that I'm highly visible because that's what I do. And I remember one day I met 2 people. One was you online for the first time, and one was Diane Taylor from the Joy Work Club. And you were both 2 people that I really looked up to online. Had 2 meetings on the same day, and both meetings started the sentence was, I've seen you everywhere. And that just really cemented it for me where A, what I was doing was right, and B, I made the right decision when I decided to become visible. I probably see that I'm a pretty good visibility and growth strategist.
It's always a good sign when people are telling you that they're seeing you everywhere, isn't it? You know you're
Yeah,
doing something
yeah.
right in your own personal strategy,
Mm.
which is amazing. So obviously that was really tough for you to make that step into being visible and showing up as who you actually are. But what would you say was the hardest thing for you in terms of running your business, either now or at the beginning?
I think at the beginning, I was doing some freelance in the pharmaceutical industry. So for me, it was the time factor. I just did not have time to do all the things, even though I'm very streamlined in what I do, and that's what I teach other people. If you're doing a full-time job and trying to run a business, it's just blooming hard, and I was getting burnt out. That freelance work was meant to run until the end of the year, but it actually got terminated in July. So I made the decision that I'd give myself 3 months to see what happened if I did it full time and to get my business running. So that was July, August, September, October. So yeah, we're nearly into the third month. So the third month is the crucial month where I'm going at the end of the month, I'm going to be launching my big thing. I've had some money coming in. I've done freelancing work. I've done some projects for companies within the pharmaceutical industry, but more aligned to what I do for small business owners as well. And I've also done some work with small business owners. So I've had the money trickling in, but I need to make that big leap to actually being able to pay the bills consistently every month. So October's my big month.
October, exciting, exciting. And I think that's something to be very clear on, isn't it? To
Yeah.
everybody that's listening, and obviously to reinforce it sometimes to ourselves as well, that there is no sort of magic source, there is no magic way to suddenly take you from zero to hero. It's, it takes time, and
Yeah,
and visibility is a key part of that thing,
that's
isn't it?
right.
If you're being
Yeah,
seen, you're being heard, and your message is all correct, and the products and services that you're offering are all correct, and it is all completely aligned, it will
yeah,
come. but it does take time. And I think that's the bit that a lot of people struggle with, isn't it? Allowing the
Yeah,
time. And I get why. I absolutely get why.
yeah.
You know, when
We
there's
have to
money in the
pay the
pot, you need
bills.
money in the
Yeah,
pot. Yeah, absolutely. But that audience building piece, that building that like no trust that we all talk about takes time, and we have to allow
mm,
it that time. And for some people it happens quicker than others, and that isn't
yes.
always down to down to your messaging or anything else. It just depends sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really about consistency, being really, really consistent about who you help, what you do, and why they need it. And I think there are some really key things that you can do to lay down the foundations of consistent messaging. So things um, like I said, being clear who you help, what you do, and why, but also things about what your mission is, your vision is, what your core values are, because all of those pull into your consistency. And also having your, hate using jargon, but I'm going to say tone of voice, but really what your tone of voice is just resonating how your ideal client speaks. So you make sure you have consistent language, how your ideal client speaks. And also the jargon term for it is your brand essence, but what I call it is your one word. So it's just your one word that underpins everything that you do within your business. So my one word is simplicity. So I make sure that everything I do in my business is simple. So from the way that I onboard people to the way you buy from me, to the way I speak to people, to the way I explain things, everything I do, I just think about, does this convey simplicity? And that's how you start getting consistency into how you speak about your business.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes complete sense, doesn't it? It all links back to
Mm.
your values, doesn't it? You know, your one of
Yes.
your values is clearly going to be simplicity, isn't it? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how you do business. That's how you want to teach your clients to do
Yeah.
business. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Why would we want to
Yeah.
overcomplicate things? I'm a huge advocate for that. You know, I'm all about the simplicity.
Yeah.
Just making it happen as easily as you can. And then it's much easier, isn't it? Much easier,
Mm.
much easier. So what would you say that for new business owners that are, are just starting out, they're in that first, year of business, for example, why do you think business owners struggle to get the growth? What do you think it is that's holding them back?
I think number one, we all come into this world thinking it's going to happen a lot more quickly than it is. So you need to be in it for the long game. You need to be consistent, and you need to hang in there when you feel like giving up, because you will feel like giving up. But the people that make it are the people that ride through that period.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. A huge thing for me has been about being in the world with the people that light me up and lift me up as well. So I think, putting the
Yes.
right people around you, surrounding yourself with the right people. And I don't mean that from a, I'm in X group and therefore I can sell to all of these people. That's not what I mean at all.
No.
It's never about the sale to me. It's always about the
Yeah.
the connection and building the relationship with people, because I think the sale then follows through. But for
Yeah.
me, surrounding yourself with the right people has been an absolute game changer for me in terms of this online world.
That leads me on to the next thing I was going to say, was just because you're a solo business owner, it doesn't mean you should be on your own, and you actually can't be on your own. So you need to invest in support. And I know it's really difficult because I've been there and I've made some mistakes with the money that I've spent, but you need to work out which part of your business needs the most investment, um, and get yourself a mentor within that area, and make sure that you don't think, oh, I'm a solo entrepreneur, so therefore I can't invest in someone else's support, because then I wouldn't be a solo entrepreneur. You're still a solo entrepreneur. You're just being savvy and you're getting the support that you need.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that we all need support. It doesn't matter what
Yeah.
stage of business we are at.
No.
We all need support and people around us and accountability. And sometimes it's just somebody to bounce those ideas around with, isn't it? Somebody
Yes.
beyond, you
Validation. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I always say that, and I say this with a lot of my clients, they know the answers. It's just the
Mm.
confidence, the belief, the little bits and pieces that sit around it that we can help and support them to be able to put that thing that they already
Yeah.
know out into the world. So, for me, I always have people that I'm working with, like as in my own
Yeah.
coaches, mentors. I love masterminds. I've just joined another mastermind, a new mastermind, because I
Hmm.
wasn't in one and I was missing that, that
Hmm.
connection piece.
Yeah.
So I've just joined, a new mastermind, and to me, that's just knowing that those people are there and they're in your corner and you for them too. It's a game changer. It absolutely is
Yeah.
a game changer.
I think what the other thing that we do is we think, right, because my business isn't making any money yet, I can't invest any money in my business. And actually, this is absolutely the time you need to do that, because that's what will accelerate your business growth.
Yeah, completely. And also, I think another question is to people who, and I've done that exact same thing too. I thought, oh no, the time's not right for me now. I need to make some more money or whatever it is that is
Yeah.
around there. It's about, okay, if that is the case, because everybody doesn't necessarily have the money right now that they need to invest in something. And I don't think anybody
Mm.
should ever be pushing themselves beyond,
No.
their capabilities. But I suppose then it has to come back to, so what are you going to do to get yourself to a point where you can invest in that? And I always think you should
Yeah.
invest in
So,
something before you need it, because when you need it, it's sort of you've missed months of opportunity.
yeah.
But what
So
can
one,
you do to put some more money in the pot so you can afford to do that thing that you need to do to get you that proper growth?
yeah. So one thing I did was I worked with somebody who I didn't want, I hope to God they're not listening to this podcast, but I worked with someone I didn't want to work with. So it's somebody that they provide a service to the pharmaceutical industry, and I had worked with them when I was in the pharmaceutical industry. And I didn't really want to work with them because I don't want to be in pharma. I want to get out of pharma, and also I found them a bit difficult to work with. But they came to me actually and said, "Look, we want you to do this." I thought, "Oh, I don't want to, but I do kind of quite want your money." So I thought, right, this is going to go one of two ways. I'm going to try and price myself out of the job. If I price myself out of the job, I don't have to do it. But if they still go for it, then I'm going to invest that money into my business. And they actually still did go for it. And that enabled me to hire a business and mindset coach.
Yeah, and I think that's
Yeah,
it, isn't it? Sometimes
yeah,
we sometimes have to do things we don't necessarily want to
yeah,
do for a short space of time to enable us to get to the point that we want to get to.
that's
It's that
right.
it's that making ourselves uncomfortable, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So what would you say was sort of like next for you in terms of your growth? You've sort of spent the last few months cementing yourself, putting your foundations in place. So for you now,
yeah,
it's about growth, isn't it? So what
yes.
is next for you?
So I have, I try and look at my visibility in terms of layers. So for my first few months of business, I picked three layers that I wanted to work on. One was podcasts, one was my breadcrumbing, and the third one was speaking in people's memberships. I'm also really heavy on tracking what works and what doesn't work. So I have a spreadsheet that I map my months, I map what I've achieved, and I map the key activities that I did, so I can look at what worked and what didn't work. So the most successful element for me out of that was speaking in people's membership. So I'm getting myself to do more of that. But my next visibility layer is networking. So I'm doing loads of online networking at the moment. I want to do some face-to-face networking. For me, it's a little bit difficult because I live in East Devon, so it's a long old trek to get to anywhere. I was actually booked in on one, and I didn't go because my I was getting really anxious about going because I just hadn't done anything like that for so long. And then someone gave me an out because basically they needed to use my vehicle that day. So I was like, oh yeah, I probably should use my vehicle so I didn't have to go. But I have one booked in December that I'm actually absolutely have to force myself to go to. So that's going to be my big thing, is to get myself more on the face-to-face networking as well as the online networking, doing more memberships. And also I found that masterclasses work really well for me. I found that I really enjoy doing them, and I found them actually pretty good at them as well. So I'm going to be doing lots more masterclasses.
Yeah. And I think that's key, isn't it? It's finding the
Yeah,
thing that works best for you, because
yeah,
there's no cookie cutter here, is there? There's no,
no,
this same thing will work for everybody else. We're not
yeah,
photocopied people, are we? So it really
no,
sometimes is a case of, like you've done, experimenting and finding the different things. Absolutely speaking in front of other people's audiences is the quickest way to get that growth, because you're being seen by people that wouldn't ordinarily have seen you.
yeah,
Things like podcasts are a long game. They are something that people will consistently be seeing you for a longer period of time, but it doesn't necessarily have that same spike as in everybody
No,
sees you all at once. It's more. It can be in 6 months, 12 months time after you've done the podcast. So it's finding the ways that you do it most. Because I always say that if you enjoy doing something like you for the masterclasses, you enjoy doing it, therefore you do an amazing job of it. Therefore,
yes,
your listeners get more out of it. Of course, it's going to naturally flow, more business your way, isn't it, ultimately?
yeah. And actually, this month I'm doing something that I haven't done before, and that's a free 4-day challenge. And I'm actually working with a sales strategist on that one. So I'm hoping that will get me in front of so many people that would never have been in my world. I don't know how, I think I feel quite nervous about it, but I feel really excited about it as well. So if that works for me and I enjoy doing it, then I'll definitely be doing it again.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, challenges work for a lot of people, don't they? They're
Yeah,
tiring. You've got to be prepared to keep going for quite a much longer period of time than you do for a
yes,
masterclass. But the results can be much bigger than a masterclass, can't they? If you've got, a lot
yeah,
more engagement and things from your people. So
yeah,
I look forward
definitely.
to seeing how that goes.
Thank you.
Super, super exciting. So at the end of every episode, I ask my guests to share with us a top tip. So what would your top tip be?
I'm all about reducing stress and reducing overwhelm. So my top tip is about social media because I know that you could spend all day on social media if you wanted to or had the time to. So my top tip is you don't need to be everywhere on social media. And I advocate only being on 2 platforms because that is more than enough for anybody. And those 2 platforms should be the 2 platforms that you're most comfortable using, but also the 2 platforms where your ideal client is most likely to be. And the way you work that out is you look at the demographics of your ideal client, you look at the demographics of your social media platforms, and you see where they marry up.
Amazing tip, amazing tip. And then finally, if our listeners want to come and learn more about you, where's the best place for them to connect?
So I'm predominantly a Facebook gal. So you can find me on Facebook in the Easy Peasy Marketing Group.
Fabulous. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been lovely chatting with you, Bryony.
It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
And thank you to everybody else for listening. We will see you next time.